Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to give you guys an update on my summer bedding plants this year. So because of moving house and because of the coronavirus and staying at my parents most of the summer, I've been kind of limited to what I can grow this year, but I'm still happy that I've managed to get a half decent display. So this is a beginning of July tour. I will do another tour in late summer when I'm hopefully going to have even more flowers on display. Part of this tour will be at my parents' house because I've got that obelisk made out of willow with sweet peas on it. Most of the summer bedding I've got are currently at my house here. So this is the central bed that I planted up in a previous video, and I'll link an iCard in now so you can click on that and have a look if you like. So what we've got here is a row of sunflowers. Interestingly, the sunflowers, the varieties haven't grown as I expected. So on the packet, these two here were supposed to be Russian giants, and they do look like Russian giants, but they've gone to flower much faster than I expected. So these were supposed to be the biggest plants. They also put some Russian giants at the far end as well over there. I thought I'd put them in the corner, that way they can get to their full height, it's not a big issue. But they've gone to flower quite early on, so they haven't got huge. This one's in fact even going over already, so that's quite early considering it's only the beginning of July and we have quite cool summers here. But they're always really popular with the bumblebees, these sunflowers. So the Russian giant should have got much bigger. I was expecting it to get close to the guttering up there in the house, but it never did. It flowered early. And then we've got other plants which were supposed to be smaller and branching sunflowers, such as this one here, which has grown to an absolute giant, and also this one here, which is branching very thoroughly, but the top is only just starting to show a flower bud, so this is going to grow another couple of feet. But I've got another one I'll show you later, which is barely showing a flower bud, and that's probably going to grow about 8 feet, 9 feet tall, so about 3 meters possibly. So it's interesting, the ones that were supposed to be smaller actually ended up being the biggest ones. These ones, however, there's 4 varieties in total. These ones have stayed quite small. These were supposed to be small branching ones, which I expected these to be a similar size to, but these ones have stayed small like I expected. These ones look like they're going to be pretty big. But what's quite exciting about this branch variety is normally when you get branching varieties, they put up the main central flower. So for example, this is the one here. They then put out side shoots, but the side shoots don't have many leaves on them. They just have one flower normally, and 2 or 3 leaves at the most. And then they might have 1 or 2 more side shoots from that side shoot, and then that will finish the flowering. Whereas this one here, some of the side shoots here are as big and as strong as a normal sunflower plant. So if I go down here, this plant coming up, that's actually a lower shoot from this one. Has no signs of flowering, so this one's probably going to grow at least another 3 foot, so a meter or so more in height. There's lots of growing points along the sides, so basically the sunflowers, the branching varieties anyway, they put out new branches from wherever the leaves connect. So this one's going to have lots more side branches, but even those side branches might have side branches themselves. So this is going to be a really long season plant. This is probably going to go right through to the frost, keep flowering. It's got loads of leaves to keep it going. What often happens with the branching ones is you deadhead them, you keep growing, but they run out of leaves, they just grow loads of flowers and then they die off before the frosts. This one, however, I'm expecting to go all summer long. It'll be really interesting to see how long it lasts. And the complete opposite of this kind of plant would be the Russian giants. They have one head, they don't side branch. Once their head's finished, the whole plant dies. So I'm quite looking forward to this one. It's going to grow for a long time. I'll just see how long I can keep it going. It should go right through to the frost, so probably October time. Although sometimes September we get frost as well. So we'll see how it does, but I'm expecting this to be really quite a big plant, almost like a tree by the end of the summer. I'm expecting it actually to probably be similar size to this contorted hazel. So it might need a bit of pruning if it gets too big. So underneath the sunflowers we have the wallflowers. I'll take you now to the other side because the wallflowers there look better. Here they're a bit more shaded, especially with the contorted hazel here, so they're not looking quite at their best. So around this side, as I say, there's a lot more sunshine getting to the cornflowers. They're looking really nice. The packet was a mixture of different colours, so I didn't know what was going to come up. Interesting, the ones at my parents' gardens have more of a mixture of flowers, but for some reason, just the way of chance, it seems to be mostly purples and maroon colours that have come up in my mixture. So these are actually really big plants. The reason for that is I've fed the soil very well when I first dug this over. And if you've seen the previous video, you'll see how much compost and fertilizer I put in. So these are individual plants. That look like a group of plants, but that's just all coming from one stem. They've grown up really well, covered in flowers now. And as long as you keep deadheading them, you can see there's a few here which need to be deadheaded. Take off the old seed heads. As long as they deadhead them, don't let them go to seed, it's just going to keep sending up more and more flowers. as long as there's nutrients in the soil and as long as there's light for it, this should flower all summer long. If you don't feed and deadhead your wildflowers, they probably will just have a shorter season, but it does depend on the wildflower. Cornflowers, I like to deadhead them, feed them, and then I don't need to sow anymore. They'll just keep reblooming the whole summer long. So they've done really nice. I'm quite happy with how they're looking. Interestingly, some of them seem to be slightly different varieties, so it doesn't seem to be so much colour dependent, but you can see most of them this kind of bushy shape. But one or two have kind of grown this much more open habit, which looks a bit more wild-like. I don't know, it's a bit unusual, but it's interesting to see the difference. And an example of sunflowers getting bigger than I expected, I was going to put smaller sunflowers at the front, and we got this one here, which is going to be an absolute giant. This is the one I said has barely shown a flower bud yet, so it's going to grow probably at least another metre. Loads of side branches coming on it as well, so it's going to be a real tree of a sunflower. You've even got side branches like this one here, which looks like a completely new plant. If you follow it down, it is in fact a side branch coming off of this main sunflower, so it's going to be absolutely giant. I've also staked the biggest ones because I don't want them to get broken on the wind. That's the biggest risk for sunflowers. Fortunately, the multi-stem ones tend to be a bit better. They resist the wind a lot better because they're the multi-stem. They tend to have thicker branches at the base and they're not as top heavy. So in between all the sunflowers, slightly further back in the bed, I've also planted the shooflies here. I've managed to catch this in the morning when some of the flowers are still open. It's about midday at the moment. You can see some of the flowers are finishing up. They only last a day each flower, but they put on loads of flowers throughout the season. I wouldn't advise growing these plants if you're anywhere tropical or even somewhere with hot summers, because it can become quite invasive with how fast it grows. Normally in Scotland this doesn't do well, but we had an unusually warm spell in June and it's grown really well and really big already. July has been quite cold. It's only about 16 degrees most days at the moment, but so the growth has slowed in it, but it still seems to be doing pretty well. If we get any warm weather, it's going to take off again, start taking over. So what I will do is I'm going to do a little bit of pruning here. You can see, for example, at the front, it's starting to take over and smother some of the cornflowers. So what I'll be doing is I'll be cutting off any of the branches that are smothering the cornflowers, give them more space, let them grow better, and just let the zoophyte plant grow further back into the kind of paved patio area that I have. And then right at the end here, we've got a few more Russian giants. One at the back, interestingly, seems to have got some genetics with a branching variety and has a few little stems coming up. And then down here we've also got some cosmos that I had left over, so I just filled this gap, and they should be flowering quite soon. You see there's a few buds starting to show on them. So the only other type of sunflower I've got in here is I've dotted in a few red ones. I think this one was called Ruby Sunset. You can tell it's the red one. It's got the slightly darker stems there, and the veins as well are kind of a dark red colour, whereas normally on a sunflower the stems are green, such as this one here. So these are quite small. These also branch, but they only grow about 6 foot tall, so I'm not expecting them to become giant sunflowers. So coming into this middle section, this is more the bedding area. Did have a nice antirrhinum here that had previously did actually come with the house, but it's got antirrhinum rust, so the whole thing's going to die, unfortunately. It seems to be a real problem here in Scotland with antirrhinums. The damp, although antirrhinums normally would grow quite well in our climate, as soon as you get antirrhinum rust, because it's damp here and humid, what happens is it just decimates the plants and the plants will die within a few weeks. So these antirrhinums have already got it. As you can see, they're dying back, and the ones I planted recently, I suspect they will get it pretty soon, and I can actually see the first signs of it starting, so you can see some discoloration there on the leaves. So unfortunately all these antirrhinums are also going to die. There's not much I can do about that. It's just something that happens here in Scotland with antirrhinums. So the same, I didn't know there was any antirrhinum bust in this area, but there obviously is. So it looks like in years to come I won't be able to grow any antirrhinums, but at least I'll get one summer out of them before the rust takes over. I might try them in maybe a few years time if the rust has disappeared from the area, as they are really nice flowers, but it's just a shame they're going to die because of that. Back here we've also got some pots which came with the house. They had toadflax, which is a wild flower, but I quite like it, so I've let it grow. And as long as I deadhead this, it should just keep flowering most of the summer. It's got lovely purple flowers, and it's very similar to the antirrhinums. And it's got a very similar kind of snapdragon flower to it, but they're just much smaller. And this does spread quite a bit, so you need to deadhead this, otherwise the seeds can go everywhere. Down here I have a tray of bedding as well. So I've got some trailing lobelias here. I will be moving this this dahlia soon, so that'll be out of the way. This does get more light normally, but these are spreading quite nicely. They are a little bit messy at the moment. They're just kind of trailing everywhere. I might need to do a bit of pruning. Also, it looks like one of them has died off, so I need to remove the dead material and allow the rest to spread. But the lobelia normally grows the whole summer long, so I'll just keep that going. Now the Geraniums over there, they were planted in the self-watering pot, so I'll give you a closer view of that. So the self-watering pot has been quite useful. You can just about see it down there. And I've got the gauge here so I can tell how much water's in it. Now that has saved me with watering. This only needs watering about every week, well, probably about once a week. But to be honest, because all the other plants need watering every couple of days, it hasn't saved me watering this year, because I think to save on the watering I'd really have to have all the plants self-watering pots. Otherwise I still have to go out every other day to water, and whilst I'm out with a hose pipe I might as well water this as well. So it's not been a big help at the moment, but if you've only got 1 or 2 pots, if you put them in a self-watering pot, it probably would be quite useful and would save on a lot of watering time. So at the front of the house we've got a couple of railings here. I think they're quite ugly, but I can't really get rid of them because when they did the external insulation on this house, they kind of built that in, so if I were to remove these it would look quite ugly. So I'm keeping the railings. Also might be useful for any guests that we have. But so what I've decided to do is grow up the morning glory plants here, up the railings to cover them. The morning glories have been quite slow outside. Scotland is a bit too cold for them, unfortunately. They are flowering though, you can see there's a flower there. They do look quite nice, and I'll just give you another close-up of this flower here. They are quite nice flowers, but as I say, they're really tropical. They don't do well in Scotland, so they're struggling a bit. The ones in the polytunnel though are looking amazing, and I'll do an update on them soon. I've also planted a couple of morning glory plants next to some of the Russian giant sunflowers so they can climb up them, because the Russian giants, those sunflowers only have 1 flower head. Once they're finished they just die off, so it'd be nice to have something to grow up them once they're finished flowering, especially as they're flowering already. So I suspect they're not going to be looking too good in about a month's time. They'll be just finished, so it'll be good to have some morning glory plants growing up them. Then this section here I've got an old drain pipe planter. This has actually been looking great all summer. It's just starting to grow over. What I need to do now is to cut it back, feed it, and it'll come up, give another flush of flowers. I quite like this one. It's actually the same family as the Geraniums. It's the snapdragon type. This one doesn't seem to get affected by Geranium rust, so that's really good. This one is called Wisley Vanilla. It's a lovely scent. It smells like vanilla. So I like having that near the front door so I can smell it as I come in and out of the house. And at some point I probably will try and attach it to some of the railings here, or possibly the drain pipe. The only problem is my drain pipes were attached quite poorly. So up here we've got external insulation, and it's kind of attached to some polystyrene behind that, which is the insulation. So the drain pipes are quite rickety and wobbly, so they're perfectly fine for the house. You know, if there's a storm they're not going to fall off, but I can't put loads of heavy plant pots on them, so that's why this planter's just on the ground at the moment. But I might try and find somewhere to put that later on, possibly on the railings if the morning glories don't grow up there by the end of summer. And coming along, got one of my dahlia plants. I won't touch up too much on that because I've got a daily update coming, but that's looking quite nice, just coming into flower. Down here I've got another tray of bedding plants. These are actually starting to grow over already. So this was a mixture of alyssum, which are these white flowers, and also some violas here. They're just starting to grow over. The violas are getting a bit leggy. The alyssum is also going over. These were planted in the spring, more like spring bedding, so now it's into the summer. They're starting to go over, and I don't expect them to last the whole summer. But what I will do is I'll cut them back, start deadheading them a bit more, and we should get a second flush. If not, it's not the end of the world. These are really spring bedding plants. They're not really so well suited to the summer. They just kind of go over by then. Up here I've also got my fuchsia. This is the giant variety. The variety of this one's called Voodoo. You can see compared to my hands, I'm 6'4", so I have got really big hands, so it's maybe not the best thing for scale, but you can see there are actually really big flowers. These are going over, so I need to start doing some deadheading there and removing them to encourage new ones. But you can see some nice new ones starting to come on there, and it does flower the whole season long. Really big blooms. I really do like this variety. This is a plant I've had for several years. I've just kind of done some unusual training with it in the past. If I can find a video when I had that previously, I'll put that in the iCard now. It's quite an old plant of mine, I've had it several years. It's not a hardy one either, so I have to take that into the conservatory in the winter, but it does nicely in the summers. It likes quite cool summers, so it does great here in Scotland. And then finally, if I come down, I've got my training geraniums here, which are starting to flower. I left them in the polytunnel. It looked like they didn't need too much pruning, so I left them unpruned, although it looks like now they're starting to get a bit straggly. They might just need the ends tidied up, encourage some more growth from further back here, and that way we'll get a bushier plant. But they're doing okay. They were in a nice sunny position, but because of the multi-stem sunflowers, and also because of the shoe fly plant up here, they're really starting to get too shaded out now. So I need to put them somewhere else. They are drain pipe planters, so a drain pipe would be good for them. I need to put them somewhere much sunnier, so when they can trail down and be seen. And as they are geraniums, they're like a really sunny position, so definitely need to be moved from where they are at the moment. I'll need to do that soon. And panning back here, you can see the shoe flies are really starting to grow back into this space. I'll let them grow back into here as much as they want, because they're not going to smother anything. But I will need to make sure that at the front where the cornflowers are, I do tidy them up a bit, so there's not a problem. So that's all for this video update. Quite a few flowers coming on. Looks like the antirrhinums will be dead by the next update, and a couple of the other plants like the alyssum and the violas might be going over. But when it comes to the main plants, such as the sunflowers, they're only going to get better as summer goes on. They're only just starting to come into bloom. So I'll give you guys an update in a couple of months' time, and I'm expecting loads of really big sunflowers. These ones, I don't know how big they're going to get. This one is going to be the biggest because it hasn't even started to show a flower bud yet. So this one looks like it's probably going to get to about 3 meters, but who knows, could be more like 4. And it'll be interesting to see as well, see how big the side branches are. The side branches currently have no sign of flower buds, so I'm expecting at least another meter of growth still to occur in these. Normally, if you've got a healthy, well-fed sunflower, if you've got flower buds, if you don't have flower buds yet, you've got at least a meter or more of growth, possibly more. So it'll be interesting to see how these do. I haven't fed these since they were originally put in, apart from a little bit of liquid feed, but I haven't fed them for over a month now, so I will start feeding again. These sunflowers have got so big, they're probably taking out all the nutrients from the soil, so I want them to keep growing really large, so I'll keep feeding them and give you guys an update in about 2 months' time. So I'd like to finish off this bedding update video at my parents' house here, showing you the sweet pea obelisk that I planted up in spring. It's done really well. Unfortunately, just recently there's been a couple of hot, dry days. The violas haven't liked that as much, and they've started to wilt, and they've fallen over because of that. They haven't died, but the display doesn't look as good because instead of looking at the flowers, you're looking at the stems, which were covered up underneath the rest of the plant. So underneath here you can probably see there's a few more flowers, but they should start regrowing up. I am surprised they didn't flop over earlier. I was expecting them to kind of trail over the edge, but they've grown up quite well and not done much trailing. I think the reason for that is they were quite close to all the willow structure here, so they've kind of melded into that, and that's helped them and supported them. Also the sweet peas as well have been climbing on them, and that's given them support. So as you can see, some of them are growing really quite tall, such as this one here. I haven't also been deadheading them too much. I'm no longer living at my parents' house as I've moved into my own, but I haven't been able to deadhead these regularly. Now ideally, if I deadheaded these every day, this would be absolutely covered in flowers. The plants would be much more vigorous and stronger, but they're still doing quite well even without any deadheading. You can see there's a lot of seed heads here, so a lot of the energy from the plant, which could go into extra flowers and growth, has gone into the seeds. But the violas are still doing quite well. What it means is they might grow over earlier than they would otherwise. If I deadheaded them, they'd be bigger now, much more flowers, and they probably keep flowering right into winter. Whereas at this state they'll probably go over kind of late summer and be finished. But the sweet peas have done well. They were a bit slow to get going, but they're looking really nice at the moment. You can see most of the flowers are at the top. There are a few lower down. You can see there's a few side shoots starting to come out from the base. So we're going to get flowers probably up the whole thing. But at the moment it's mostly focused flowers at the top. Now what I have done is I've done quite a lot of pruning work on the willow itself. The willow grew massively. There's probably about 5 times as many branches as there are now. But what I've done is I've thinned it, so there's probably just about 1 or 2 branches per willow stake. That way it's less congested, so the sweet peas can grow up them without getting too shaded out by the willow. I want to have some willow growth, partly because I like the willow to stay alive so it doesn't go rotten and I can use it for numerous years. But also because these sweet peas are growing so well, what's going to happen is they're going to quite soon reach the top of the obelisk and run out of support. So if I let the willow grow, they can grow up the willow branches, and the sweet peas can get really, really big, probably up to 3 meters in height or so, and give us a really great display that way. And the other reason I've cut a lot of the willow branches off is the willow's going to be taking up a lot of nutrients, a lot of water, and that's going to be competing with the sweet peas, stunting their growth. So far it hasn't stunted the growth. As you can see, the growth is really good, but it would do eventually. So what I need to do is keep feeding it, keep deadheading it. My mum cuts the sweet peas all the time, so normally it doesn't actually look quite as good as this because she's cuts sweet peas every single day. But I've made sure she didn't cut them for a couple of days so we can get a better display. The sweet peas are really nice actually. They have really good strong scent, really strong scent. So I can smell at the moment, even though it's quite windy, a lot of the smell of the scent from the flowers is getting blown away. It still smells quite strong at the moment. And there's loads of flowers coming. And generally sweet peas are quite good. They don't get too many diseases. Sometimes they can get mildew. There's a bit of leaf miner this year, because I've not really seen in sweet peas before. But it's not a big issue at the moment. I don't think that's going to cause a major issue in the rest of the summer. So as long as we keep this well watered, keep deadheading the sweet peas so they don't set seed, because as soon as the sweet peas set seed, they just kind of give up and they'll stop growing. They'll put all the energy into the seeds. So as long as we keep deadheading them, they should keep growing. I am actually hoping that they'll start climbing right up to the top. We might get 3 or 4 meters height on the sweet peas. These are quite a tall variety as well, so that's good. It should mean they should reach the top. Some sweet peas are a bit more dwarf. They'll never get much more than about 3 or 4 foot, whereas this one, it looks like a tall variety. Should be able to get to about 3 meters. And when it comes to the violas, if I do another update, they'll probably be going over. They are short-lived plants, especially if they're not deadheaded regularly. So we'll see what they do. There is a chance that they might recover, even the ones that have fallen over, but I suspect they'll probably die off. So that's all from this update. I'll just leave you now with the self-seeded Californian poppies here. We just leave them to self-seed all over the place, and they often look quite nice. Goes quite nicely with the obelisk there. So that's all from this update, and I'll give you guys an update probably towards the end of summer, and we'll see how the bedding plants are doing then.